If you've seen the trailer for Emerald Fennel's Wuthering Heights, in other words, if you've been to the movies lately, and are planning to finally read the book before you go to buy your ticket, there's something very important that you need to know before you do. More specifically, if you saw this tag on the official trailer and thought, oh, I love romance, I need to give this a read. I hate to be a fly in your Chardonnay, but you are in for a major disappointment. Because here's the thing. Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights is not a love story, at least not in the way that this trailer would lead you to believe. Wuthering Heights is a gothic story about obsession, treachery, and revenge. The characters in this book are cruel, immoral, and selfish people who treat each other like pawns in a diabolical game of chess, none more so than Catherine and Heathcliff, the very lovers that the whole story revolves around. Catherine Earnshaw, or Cathy, is passionate and flighty, but also completely self-centered, manipulative, and opportunistic, while Heathcliff is a tyrannical villain pulled straight from the bosom of Machiavelli. Some of the he pulls in this. Well, you'll know it when you read it. And if you have, chapter 14, am I right? I acknowledge that Catherine and Heathcliff's dynamic is romantic in nature, but I think to call it a love story for that is really oversimplifying it. And to call it the greatest love story of all time is just flat out wrong. That would be like someone asking, what's your favorite romantic movie? Definitely have to go with Marty Supreme. Catherine and Heathcliff's relationship is dark and it is toxic, bringing nothing but misery to everyone it touches, including themselves and each other. And that's the whole point. There is nothing warm, sentimental, and certainly nothing erotic about their love story, nor about this novel, really. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, that sounds horrible, you're right. And that is the problem that Wuthering Heights has encountered for most of its 178-year lifespan. People go into this novel expecting Romeo and Juliet, expecting Pride and Prejudice. It's hard to clock exactly where the romanticizing of this novel first took hold, but I think a great case can be made for 1939, when director William Wyler released his adaptation starring Laurence Olivier and Merle Oberon. The film significantly reframed Catherine and Heathcliff, and by extension, people's impression of the story by softening the characters to make the romance sweeter in nature, and by omitting the second half of the novel in its entirety, which is all about Heathcliff's dastardly plot for revenge and the consequences that result from it. And now with the release of the Fennel film and the onslaught of images like this in the trailers, my fear is that people are now going to go into this novel expecting a Harlequin bodice ripper, a sort of Regency, Victorian era 50 Shades of Grey. Can't blame people for thinking that with all the latex on display in this film. And that is just not what this novel is, nor what it has ever been. Emerald Fennell herself has said that she is loosely adapting the novel based on how she remembers reading it at age 14 and how she wishes certain things played out differently or how she imagined them in her head. Which a statement like that personally makes me wonder, why don't you just take those imagined aspects and make an original story based on Wuthering Heights instead of changing up Bronte's story so much that all that remains is the outer shell but none of the original DNA. Something that looks a lot less like Wuthering Heights and a lot more like Barbie's dream brothel.
Dolls and batteries not included from Mattel.
Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, why can't you just let the movie be what it is? Why does it have to be the book verbatim? I'm not saying it has to be. Fennel is a filmmaker and she is well within her rights to adapt the film however she wants, even if it means totally whitewashing the character of Heathcliff once again. And I am well aware that an unfaithful adaptation does not automatically a bad one make by any means. For example, look at films like The Shining, Dracula, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, the original James Whale Frankenstein for that matter. All adaptations I love in totally different ways than the novels on which they're based. When it comes to adapting a story, I am all for directors inserting their own visions, their own themes, as long as the soul of the original novel remains, as well as a respect and acknowledgement of the author's original intent. And whether this film does that and works on its own merit, I think is going to come down to the strength of the writing. For me, that's what every adaptation, every film comes down to, whether it's well written and presents its vision with integrity and artistry. However, when it comes to the novel, my concern is people basing what they expect it to be when they go to read it on what they've gleaned from the Fennel film. And I don't think that's a non-concern considering the book has received a huge surge in sales surrounding this film's release. And the main reason I worry is because Wuthering Heights is already so misunderstood as a novel and so unfairly maligned by some people precisely because of its mislabeling as a romance. People go into this novel with this presumption presumption, and when they don't get that, they seem to hold it against the novel itself instead of taking the time to reassess and meeting the novel on its own turf. Which is why, regardless of whether the upcoming film turns out to be great, and I truly hope it is, I also hope that one day another filmmaker will take on the challenge of adapting the book faithfully. I would absolutely love to see a version that explores the story's pathos and complexities as they exist, and the dark, messy nature of Heathcliff and Catherine's relationship. And while there have been several adaptations over the years, most of them follow the precedent of the 1939 film in that they omit the second half of the novel entirely and or reframe and romanticize the relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff. There is, to this day, not a single adaptation that both adapts the second half of the novel and features a non-white actor in the role of Heathcliff. And I think that that's what fans of the book like me have long been awaiting. An adaptation that emphasizes not just the messy nature of Heathcliff and Catherine's relationship, but also the social implications that come with Heathcliff's race and how that affects and shapes what he becomes over the course of the novel. This book is dense, but it's not impenetrable. I mean, it's not Ulysses. It may not be as easy to sell as a classic romance, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to do. And I do think that this book is worthy of an adaptation that is true to Bronte's original vision and her original themes, which I think in many ways would help to undo the misapprehensions and misunderstandings that have so long surrounded this novel. There is a reason that this book is considered a classic and why people, including myself, love it the way that we do. So to reiterate my original statement, if you're going into this book for the first time, be prepared for something dark and twisted and filled with dastardly people doing dastardly deeds. If you are looking for a dark romance, then I would highly recommend reading Charlotte Bronte's exquisite Jane Eyre. If you're looking for something feminist, then please give Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall a read, one of the original girl power novels. The Brontes were all incredible writers with incredible creative voices, and there's a reason why their names hold the weight that they do when it comes to the world of literature, including and especially Emily Bronte's challenging, gorgeous, and wholly unromantic Wuthering Heights.